Vila, one of your hosts here on Hooked and Mortgages, and I am here today with.
Matt Barquette, your co-host, and also a loan officer here at Real Mortgage.
Nice. So today I think we're going to start a segment. I think we're going to call it Freaky Fridays. We're going to talk about maybe horror stories that we may have had in the past, and I think maybe we should talk about something that was brought up this morning in regards to capital gains and unrealized gains, which Grant Cardone tweeted about, or it was on one of his social channels. They're saying that on unrealized gains, they're going to want to tax us 25%. I don't know how that's going to work.
No, I don't really see that one passing through, or at least that part of it. We'll see what happens on the that new 44 or whatever it was percentage tax, but the unrealized gains, we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, I really don't see how you're going to tax someone on unrealized gains. If someone has money in the market and they're not monitoring it, there's so many swings that can happen overnight or throughout the year or throughout the month that they're not on track of their finances, or maybe have a financial advisor. They're going to tax them on money that they're making that I don't even know about. Or maybe they're going to force them into wanting to sell it at the end of the year if they do know about it, to then get the capital gains.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with housing appreciation. I mean, you're going to tax somebody on their house appreciating 30, let's say 3-4%. So I don't know. Again, I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's definitely a topic that's just going to be pretty well talked about in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's just something that, not to get into politics, but this administration has done a very fine job to keep us on our toes and wondering what the next move or next surprise is going to be. And it's kind of like a horror story.
Yeah.
It's been like a horror story for some time now, which will take us into today, Freaky Fridays. Let's talk about maybe transactions or clients. Let's not do any names though. Let's leave the names out of it.
No names.
Or, maybe somebody that was part of the transaction. What stories can you share that, on a transaction of something that may have gone wrong, or maybe that, it went well, but throughout the process to get there, it was a horror. It was, you wouldn't want to go through it again.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely I've had quite a few of those. I mean, off the top of my head was I was working at one of my previous lenders. It was a construction loan, or a new construction file. So the house wasn't going to be ready for 6 or 7 months in advance. It was 3 buyers, and in order to qualify them, one of the buyers was promised a promotion at the end of the year. So I believe it was like coming into December, he was supposed to get offered the job. We were coming up to December, and I think the house was going to be done in, let's say, January or February. I'd asked them, what's going on with the promotion? When are we going to get the offer letter? When am I going to see your first pay stub? So, we're good to go there. And he just came out and flat out told me that the person he was supposed to be replacing decided to stay an extra 3 or 4 years. So they weren't ready to retire. Basically gave the Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not leaving. So, from there was a little bit of panic mode. They didn't really have anyone to co-sign. Luckily, the borrower's sister, who was living in New York at the time, said she would offer to be a non-occupant co-borrower. Ended up having to work on, the credit and, the income with that one. It wasn't the strongest of files, but, and then, last minute they decided to put in when we were getting ready to close, thought I had everything all sorted out. And there was a large deposit that came in from their, I believe they had sold something, but they didn't tell me about this. And there was like a $15,000 or $20,000 of cash deposit in the account. I think it was 4 or 5 days before closing. Luckily, we ended up having, or they actually did have, a sales invoice. I think they sold like a car or a piece of jewelry or something like that. and was able to pass it through underwriting, and eventually got him to closing. But that was about a 6 or 7 month ordeal with a lot of little stuff, and then some other big stuff leading to the final closing. So that was a good one to get off my back there.
Well, yeah. So it seems like my philosophy is, I think a transaction is going to go sideways at least 3 times before you get to the closing table. You can have the most perfect file, very clean income, assets all seem to be there, no large deposits, but you may have something come up with your inspection, your appraisal, something on title. I don't believe in the perfect file. So leading into one of my horror stories is, I thought I had the perfect file. Everything's great. I was actually working with one of my realtors. She was the buyer. And you know how that goes. Working with a referral partner on their own loan is challenging, to say the least. It really will test your relationship. But in our case, everything was perfect. It was great. Everything went through. Title was good. Appraisal was good. Insurance was fine. No issues with the inspections. I think we were clear to close in under 2 weeks. Buyer goes to do the final walkthrough. She got the seller to agree to close prior to the closing date on the contract. She goes to do the walkthrough, and I get a call. It's like, hey, you'll never believe this. Someone has pitched a tent in the backyard.
Oh, my God.
So, it turned out to be the seller's son that apparently didn't want to leave, and he pitched a tent in the backyard.
Wow.
One thing led to another. Somebody in the transaction knew someone that worked at Miami-Dade, and they were able to assist in the process of getting this person to vacate the backyard and essentially pack up their tent and their belongings while we were there. Never a good thing to see that happen, but it was one of those that, hey, there's no perfect file.
Yeah, actually, just to think of another one that I had. This one actually, well, they ended up closing. It wasn't on this property, but essentially, it was again another clean client. Unfortunately, the appraisal came in short. But the biggest factor was, I take that back. The appraisal came in at value, might have been actually above value, and title actually came back. I'll never forget this one. I'm surprised this one just came to my head. It was a husband and a wife who were on title, and the husband, there was liens on the property from the United States federal government because he was in jail, and had been convicted. If I remember correctly, it was for some sort of terrorism. And he was locked up, and they had close to $200,000 in liens on the property that he had to pay, that were obviously attached to the property. And the worst part about it was my client was trying to get out of the contract, but the seller still had a certain amount of time to try to solve those liens, because obviously the appraisal came in fine. We were past the appraisal contingent, or the inspection contingency. So eventually, after I think the seller, or the wife of the owner of the property who was in jail, kind of realized that they weren't going to solve it in the 2 weeks that they had. So eventually, actually sign the release and cancellation. But that was I remember that was a phone call I got from title. They didn't even send an email. They called me and basically just told me, you're never going to believe what just came up on title. I was, try me. It was the United States federal government's putting liens on an inmate who was convicted of terrorism. Those
liens will get you. Now that you brought that up, I had one back when we were on our retail days that they were purchasing a property and doing the loan with us, but the proceeds were coming through the sale of one of their real estate owned properties. And I don't know how this came up, but somehow, some way, they wanted to see something on the sale of that property that those proceeds were being used. I don't remember. It was a non-QM loan that was being done with, we'll leave the name out of it. It's irrelevant as far as a lender. But they had an IRS tax lien. And, nothing really ever happened. They weren't able to sell the property. They were negotiated. It went on for months and months and months, and it was just one of those never-ending cartwheels or hamster wheels, if you will, that you never get off of. But yeah, the liens will definitely do it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we've had our fair share of the buyers not always telling the truth. Have had my fair share of people not disclosing what's on the application. Not disclosing Chapter 7s or foreclosures. Speaking of, I mean, it wasn't even his fault. He had no idea. This was in October of last year. Buyer went under contract. I mean, you should remember this one. And comes to find out he had co-signed for a house for his sister in like 2010. She lived up in New York. And he came up, he was under contract, and when they ran the fraud guard, came up that there was a foreclosure coming up on a property that he owns, which we had discussed, but he told me his sister had been making payments. And I had asked him about it. He's like, "Oh no, that's not true. This is wrong. This is fraud," and told me that he had gotten an attorney and was getting involved. Long story short, obviously we had to cancel the transaction, and his sister did actually end up foreclosing on the property. Didn't let him know that she was not making payments. And now he's obviously affected on buying his own property because, she didn't come, she didn't ask for any help, or I don't know if she wasn't aware or what it was, but she didn't say anything, and now he's truly affected, and she lost her knows a condo or a house, whatever it was, but I don't know. Now they both have foreclosures, and he's stuck on the waiting period right now.
At the good old family surprise, you try to do somebody a favor and they just stick it to you.
Yep, exactly.
Yep, that's unfortunate there. I had one this week that it was a little bit of a mishap with the inspection on the roof. Kind of slipped through the cracks between the parties involved. That the insurance agent said that the roof had an area that needed to be repaired, but kind of wasn't transparent in the fact that it was, we were going to submit it to the carrier and say, "Hey, Mr. Carrier, trying to insure this home, will you accept it with just this repair on the roof?" It's kind of what everyone interpreted on the transaction. And when the carrier reviewed the inspection and the roof repair contract that the roofer gave the buyer, the insurance agent, the insurance carrier turned it down. So now we're back to the drawing board on this transaction. I guess that's one of the ones that I had this week that I probably won't forget for a while.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a couple of failed 4 points with roofs and with inspections these last couple of weeks. I know there's something in the air, but definitely some stuff going with these houses and 4 points with issues. Roofs definitely, and then electrical boxes as well. But I have a transaction right now, that has an issue with the 4 point with the electrical box and the roof. Another one with the roof as well. Luckily, that one we got into closing. So, hopefully, it's not a widespread thing.
Yeah, I just think the insurances here in Florida are just so limited. I was actually reading, I think earlier this week or last week, we should be getting some help. I think that there's like 4 or 5 new insurance carriers that are apparently coming into our market, which should help us out with problems like this. I know when we first started, you had People's Trust. Those guys would insure just about a Cracker Jack box. It didn't really matter what it was. They're like, "Hey, you need insurance? Sign us up. We got you." And when all those storms came through and, the good old South Florida claims with cast iron piping that have been coming through the works the last couple years, which is like the new fraud of South Florida, it took them out. It took out just about every carrier. The only one left really is Citizens. And it's become extremely challenging to insure a home. Or if you're able to get it insured, the premium's through the roof. I guess that's a good question to ask you, because you that's something that you deal with on the transaction. What have you been seeing where if the insurance is expensive or there is an issue like that, like what can be done to remedy the transaction?
I mean, in regards to if it's a failed 4-point, I mean, we've definitely seen some like seller contributions, or luckily, obviously, the seller knows that they can't sign or won't be able to close, so it's something that they're forced to fix. I know sometimes it's not always needed. Some of the stuff luckily hasn't been needed to close. But I mean, just coming into the transaction, or at least once we're in the inspection period, it's something that that's we try to address up front, just so there's no time wasted or money wasted for the client.
Yeah, that's hopefully now with these new carriers coming in, it helps this problem because it's starting to be an issue.
We'll see what happens. We got hurricane season coming now too, so knock on wood.
Hopefully nothing happens and these carriers don't back away from coming into the state of Florida and wanting to insure some homes, because I really think that we're teeter-tottering on the path where these mortgage companies probably need to start considering something along the lines like they do with mortgage insurance, where it gets kind of put into your payment for homeowners insurance. Like set it at a discount or a percentage of the loan amount or purchase price, and collect it every month, because we're coming up to a point where it's becoming unmanageable for not only buyers, but we know somebody in particular that they've owned their home forever and their renewal just came in and it's like $12,000, and they don't know what they're gonna do. My wife's nail lady, she's owned her home forever. The insurance came back at $12,000, and I think these situations are going to start to come up more and more, which is a horror in itself. Is you have somebody that's been in the home forever, and now the factor of affordability isn't there. Because you and I both know, hey, if you don't pay that insurance or go and get insured, what are they going to do to you? They're going to force place the insurance, and it's probably going to be even higher than the $12,000.
Yeah, it's force place is ugly.
Yeah. So we're going to take this time now. We're going to shout out a sponsor today. Sponsor today of today's show is going to be Disclose and Close. They do mortgage processing for mortgage brokers. They currently are in the state of Florida, and they are working on their website right now. Their website is going to be for loan officers to go ahead and submit their deal, track their deal throughout the processing, through the mortgage process, essentially from start to finish. And we'll go ahead and put a link on the on this podcast in the description for you to click on to check out some information about them.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say, if anybody's, whoever's listening, if you obviously if you're in the mortgage industry, I'd love to hear some of you guys' horror stories. So. Feel free to give us a little caption of what you've experienced. If we've got plenty more, these are just a couple, but if you've got some good ones, feel free to comment. I'm sure everybody would like to get a laugh out of some of your at our expense as well. Yeah,
we know if you've been in the business for at least 6 months, you got something to write or something to talk about, whether it be a client experience, somebody on the transaction, or, anything that went wrong. You have a story to share. This is the real estate world at the end of the day, and it's not perfect. But, we'd like to thank everyone for listening. Thanks for checking us out again, and make sure you like and subscribe.